Welcome to The Explainer. This is where we break down the big ideas shaping our world one slide at a time. And today, man, we are digging into a really potent argument, one for a pretty radical shift in American education. This all comes from the Find a Better School YouTube series.
All right, let's jump right in with a pretty bold claim from our source material. The series kicks off with this idea that the U.S. is already in the middle of an education revolution. The argument they make is that the pandemic was this huge wake-up call for parents. Suddenly, they wanted more flexibility, they demanded better options, and that is what's fueling this whole thing.
And to back that claim up, they point to some pretty big numbers. We're talking about a massive shift in where students are actually going to school. They say this isn't just some theory, right? It's a real, tangible trend. And here's the number they use as proof: 1.2 million. That's how many students they say have left district schools since just 2019. That's presented as, hard evidence that this change isn't coming, it's already here.
Okay, so what's really driving this so-called revolution? Well, first, the series paints a picture of a system that it says is just in crisis. It's failing parents, it's failing students. The argument is that this old one-size-fits-all approach, it's basically collapsing under its own weight.
And here's where it gets really interesting. They don't start with test scores or budgets. No, the argument starts with how students feel. The series points to this big Yale study of over 21,000 high schoolers, and the takeaway is pretty stark. 75%, three-quarters, of the feelings students have about school are negative. This is really the emotional heart of their whole argument.
So what are those feelings exactly? Well, the top three that students reported were tired, stressed, and bored. The series highlights these three and basically asks, how can you expect real curiosity or any genuine learning to happen in an environment that's defined by that? The argument is, you just can't.
And that brings us to what the series frames as a really crucial point: the money. There's this huge disconnect, they argue, between how much we spend and what we get for it. We're talking, in some cases, over $15,000 per student. And yet, the argument goes, the system still fails to prepare kids for the challenges of life. It's that feeling of, hey, where's the return on this massive investment, that really powers the call for a total overhaul.
So, if the system's in crisis, what's the fix? Well, this is where the source material turns to the language of economics. The solution it proposes is pretty simple, actually: competition and choice. The idea is that education should work like any other industry. That competition is what drives quality up and brings costs down.
And this slide really boils down the central conflict as the series sees it. It's a tale of two models, right? On one side, you've got what they call government schooling, which they describe as a well-funded government monopoly with that one-size-fits-all approach. And on the other side, education freedom. This is the movement for things like charter schools, hybrids, micro-schools, basically a system where the money follows the child and the power shifts to the parents.
So how would this education freedom thing actually work? Well, the series lays out a pretty clear four-step market-based process. Step 1, parents get to be the decision makers. Step 2, the funding, the tax dollars, follows the child through things like ESAs or vouchers. Step 3, this new demand inspires entrepreneurs to innovate and create all kinds of different schools. And Step 4, that competition naturally drives up quality and, they argue, leads to better options for everyone.
Okay, but it's not just about the economic model. This goes deeper. The source material is also pushing for a very specific philosophy of education. So now we're getting into the why. The argument here is that this isn't just about changing how schools get their funding, it's about changing what we think schools are for in the first place.
And to do that, the series anchors its vision in this quote from Ayn Rand. The key idea here is that the purpose of education is to teach a student how to live their life by developing their mind and equipping them to deal with reality. So, from this point of view, the goal isn't just to memorize facts. It's about teaching students how to think, how to reason, how to integrate knowledge for themselves.
The main philosophy they champion is something called classical education. They describe it as this really rigorous, time-tested method that was actually pretty common among America's founders. It's a three-part process called the trivium, designed to train the mind. You start with grammar, the what, then you move to logic, the why, and you finish with rhetoric, expressing and arguing your point. It's all built around studying the great books and liberal arts.
But it's important to see that the argument isn't for just one single method. It's for a whole family of philosophies that they see as compatible. For instance, they also praise the Montessori method for how it fosters rigorous, self-motivated growth. This really signals that they appreciate any model that puts student agency front and center and nurtures that natural desire to learn.
All right, so to really make the case for why this revolution is so necessary, the series takes us on a history lesson. But it's a very specific retelling of American education history. It frames the past not as some kind of steady, natural improvement, but as a sharp, deliberate turn away from a totally different model.
So, according to the series, this timeline isn't the story of progress we might think it is. It's a story of a deliberate pivot. The narrative starts way back in colonial times, with schools designed to teach kids to read the Bible. It moves through Jefferson's ideas, and then, here's the key moment, Horace Mann. He gets inspired by the Prussian model of state-run schooling, and that, they argue, is what sets us on the path to the compulsory, universal system we have today, a shift away from a diverse free market and toward a centralized, state-controlled machine.
And here's the absolute linchpin of their historical argument. It's all about intent. The series claims that the system we have today wasn't designed to help individuals flourish. No, it argues it was built for two things: to create a docile, obedient workforce for the industrial age and to civilize, their word, immigrant children. So, from this perspective, it was built for social control and economic output, not for nurturing free minds.
Okay, so we've seen the what, the critique and the solution. We've seen the why, the philosophy and the history. Now let's look at the who. Who is the architect of this argument? Because understanding the creator gives us a whole lot of context for the perspective we're looking at.
The creator's name is Mariana Davidovich, and her personal and professional background is really rooted in all these themes. She escaped Soviet Jewish persecution as a child. She has an MBA in entrepreneurship. She even wrote a book on communism and socialism. Her entire focus, as she describes it, is on empowering individual and economic freedom and getting rid of barriers for entrepreneurs.
And if you look at her professional affiliations, which are all listed publicly, you can see she's deeply connected to a network of free market think tanks, libertarian societies, and specific education policy groups. Organizations like the Foundation for Economic Education and the American Enterprise Institute. This places her and her argument squarely within that intellectual tradition.
And this quote from her own bio really ties it all together. She says she is fueled by personally escaping communism, and that her life's work is to devise strategies that empower individual and economic freedom. So this isn't just about policy for her. She frames her entire mission as a direct response to the ideologies her family fled. And that provides the key context, the framework for this entire argument we've been walking through.
So you step back and you put all the pieces together, right? The critique of the current system, the philosophy of individualism, the retelling of history, and the creator's own mission. And a very clear, very unified worldview comes into focus. The source material presents public schools as a failing, socialist-style monopoly. And from that standpoint, the only logical solution is a full-blown free market revolution rooted in liberty.
And all of this leaves us with the one big central question that the source material keeps coming back to, a question that really gets at the very purpose of school itself. What is it all for? Is the ultimate goal social cohesion? Is it workforce development? Or, as these sources argue, is it about equipping an individual's mind to be able to freely and fully engage with reality? That right there is the core of the entire debate.